along to another episode of Sweet Tea and Coffee. This is an exciting day for a bunch of reasons. Number one, we have finally reached the mountaintop of sponsorship.
That's right. We are officially duly sponsored.
Duly sponsored.
Yeah.
There is a line to get in on Sweet Tea and Coffee. And the first two that have been admitted to the show, really seriously though, big thanks. Today we're doing something really special. We've got a whole group of friends. Many friends of the pod actually are here with us.
That's right.
Tonight. So big shout out. There they are.
There they are.
And so University Coffee and Brennan's Barbecue have graciously sponsored our Sweet Tea and Coffee beverages for the night. But we're sitting here live. We wanted to bring everybody in on what we're doing, and so we're gonna see how this goes. Hopefully they don't boo us live.
It's a risk I'm willing to take,
but we'll see. So here we go. So we've got a incredible guest today. We say that every time, and this is the first time we've meant it, but we've got an incredible guest today. We've got with us a person that has a last name that is legendary,
right,
in the Piney Woods. Right? Would you?
Might be a stretch.
Okay, legendary. That's
infamous, maybe?
Okay, there we go. That's better. Infamous. That voice that you hear, friends, is none other than George Middlebrook IV. So, George, thanks for being with us. Thanks for joining us for the podcast today. You're excited about this, right?
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you think?
We'll find out here
in an hour.
In an hour.
Sounds good.
I mean, here's the deal. When George came in, he noticed that we'd put a mug on his place because we know where he lands in the sweet tea and coffee.
Already knew.
I was kind of expecting that question. I already had all sorts of... No, I didn't.
There's no reason to expect that question. In fact, I was reflecting when we moved here in 2011. It wasn't long before. Actually, George was part of the team that was that interviewed me, part of the committee the personnel committee that did my interviews. And actually, I tell a story about when Lindsay and I came here to interview for this job. That we got to Nacogdoches, and there were in November, and there were people wearing flip-flops. And it was amazing. And so when George walked in today wearing his flip-flops, he was the guy
it made sense.
wearing the flip-flops when I went, we have to live here. Flip-flops in November. We have to live here. This is amazing.
Well, now it's August and you're regretting that.
And now, that's right. So, but seriously, met George and learned really early on that he's a big coffee guy. And here's what gives it away. Quint gives it away. Quint's here today with us. Quint is George's son. And Quint, I don't know how, in 2011, how old were you? 6 years old. At 6 years old, came in and to church one morning, and there is Quint, little 6-year-old, holding his styrofoam cup of straight black coffee, smiling real big and tearing it up. And it's like, okay, this is a coffee family. So no accident you would land on the coffee side?
That was probably the right answer.
Yeah, that was probably the
I was afraid that the cup wasn't large enough for you. That was
I was kind of expecting one of these big, we may have to call for refills.
Yeah, we may need to do that.
That's right. We'll take a break halfway and have a refill. Okay, I said your family is legendary. You said infamous, maybe somewhere in between, but your family has been here a long time. Give us an idea of how your family arrived in Nacogdoches, and you've lived here all your life. What's that like? What was life like growing up?
I've lived here all my life. The Middlebrooks came, my great-grandfather was a sawmill doctor, and so he was here at Cairo and later down outside of Woden. And my grandfather was actually born in a little sawmill town called Dockville outside of Woden in 1917. The Mass side of the family, my dad's mother's family, we can trace roots back to the oldest one we know that was born in Nacogdoches County was in 1821, coming through there. So we do have some roots here, been here a little while.
How does that compete with your
They
crew?
beat us just slightly.
I was going to say,
There's
sounds
not
like
many out there.
winner.
There's not many out there, but they do beat us just slightly.
I mean, how do you feel about that?
I mean, I'm friends
You
with
guys
them.
are okay? You guys are okay?
Our families
Okay.
have been around together for a long time.
Okay, it's it from 1823 to now, but we're now all friends?
Yeah,
okay,
we're good.
that's good.
Good. 200
That's
years.
good. You said a sawmill doctor?
Yeah, so back in the day, they took and there's no towns here. They would actually move a sawmill in and build their own town, and they had a railroad going through there, and they would haul logs there. Didn't have log trucks. They hauled them with mules, and then had little tram railways out there. And so they had a store and commissary, all the different things there. But one of the things they had was a doctor, and so that's what my great-grandfather...
that's what you need at a sawmill. You're going to need a doctor,
obviously.
Yeah,
but
it's a dangerous place.
I need one of those in my shop all the time. Yeah. That's really, so it's almost essentially like you have a community that basically...
have your own community there. And,
Yeah.
and they would actually, I don't know about these here, but a lot of times they actually were paid in sawmill script that worked at the store. And, I don't know how that translated into real dollars, but that's part of the way some of that went. But
So what's that like growing up in a community where your family is everywhere? Here, has been here a long time. You've got family all over the place. What's that like growing up in that environment?
Well, it makes it a little hard to get away with anything when you're a teenager, but other than that, no, it's good. It was neat. Even growing up here in the church, I just had a lot of old people, or even around town, I had people would say, "Hey, your grandfather," meaning my great grandfather, he took my appendix out on our kitchen table and saved my life, or your grandfather delivered me. And so it's kind of neat. But we were actually talking the other day that my grandfather, kids today, and even our kids too, me as well, we don't expect as much out of them as they did back then. But my grandfather was driving his father around to people's houses when he was 11 for house visits, and he was assisting with surgery and those kind of things.
At 11?
At 11, at somebody's kitchen table.
Wow.
So,
wow, that's amazing. That's at kitchen table. Yeah, that's an interesting place to do surgery. Again.
It is.
A little different than today.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Okay, so you didn't get away with anything, but you grew up. You mentioned in the church. Did you grow up in the church?
Yeah, I grew up here in Fredonia Hill. I started coming 9 months before I was born, and my mom grew up here in Fredonia Hill, and my grandmother and great grandmother were here, and one of my. I believe that of course, the church here started as a outreach of First Baptist, the way I understand it.
Yeah.
But I think part of that started out of a great aunt or great something. Part of that was out of a Sunday school class that she was in, but they didn't come here. But my mom's side of the family actually grew up here. My dad grew up at First Baptist,
but they were part of that group that kind of initiated what we would call today as a church plant, but initiated a revival. What they called then was, we're going to have a group that meets and then eventually lead to a revival that would lead to a church. And they were.
And I don't know how early my ancestors were in the church, but I know that they were. At least my great grandmother was here. So anyway, yeah.
Okay, so at what point? I mean, you've been here a long time.
Yeah, a little while.
George has been here a long time.
Yeah.
At what point, I think there are some stories about you guys running around near the lake on some four-wheelers or something.
Not together. Not together. Different times.
He blazed the trail, maybe? What's the story? What's the
maybe
story?
A couple years earlier.
Yeah.
We were before four-wheelers. It was actually go-karts.
Go-karts.
And then later four-wheelers.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Okay, so how did you guys meet?
Probably here, right?
Yeah,
I think so. Yeah, oddly enough.
He came in interim, and so.
No kidding. So you'd been here that long, kind of grew up?
I don't know if you can tell. He's just a few years older than me. So
a few years older?
A couple. I'm in my late 20s. So.
Yeah.
No, so there was a neighborhood out at the lake that I guess your
my
family put that neighborhood in.
Mm-hmm.
And then they lived out there for a little while.
Yeah,
and
we took and my great aunt and uncle they were like another set of grandparents to us. They had a house that they didn't ever use, so we'd go out there for a month in the summer and live there. And then later we took and built a little small house out there, and so we'd actually pack up and move out there in the summertime. We'd be out there all summer and move back to town once school started, and so we had a lot of little trails and things that we took, and we didn't have. Well, we had a TV with rabbit ears that didn't really work. Somebody had to hold on to them, if you.
Somebody had to stand there and actually hold. Yeah.
And so it was pretty much if you were home.
Who was that? Was that you or Andrew that had to do that?
A little of both.
Okay, swap off. Okay.
But so we took and pretty much spent all the time outside. And Mom would take, and we had to listen. And we'd come back out. There was an area out there in between. It was kind of a circle drive out there, the road, and so we called it the middle. We had to come out and get out there in the middle every half an hour or hour, before. So Mom could see us out the kitchen window. But we'd had to listen for the horn. If she honked the horn, I don't remember if it's 2 or 3 beeps, but she'd honk the horn, and we better get there. If we didn't get there, we were in trouble. But so
a couple years.
So he literally blazed.
The trails, and a few years later, my grandparents bought a house in that neighborhood, just a couple houses down from theirs.
Okay.
And y'all weren't even there anymore.
Yeah, we weren't there anymore.
But I was a 13, 14-year-old, and we ran across these trails out in the woods.
And you
we were
think, look what we found.
Yeah,
this
is amazing. Yeah, and it would cut through all the neighborhoods, and we would terrorize everybody in the neighborhood at night and ride the foilers around. So
we might have been a trail that you could get all the way to Douglas, or might have gone to Looneyville a few times on the four-wheelers.
That's not in the middle. You can't hear the horn from there.
Yeah, it was a little far.
Is that a confession? That is for sure recorded. All right. Carla, I hope you're listening. This is going to be good.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay, so you grew up, all of your childhood life is Nacogdoches.
Yeah, all here. So.
All here, all in Nacogdoches, all Fernonia Hill. What is, in your family, you said 9 months before you were born, so you grew up in a context where faith was practiced and on display?
Absolutely.
What was that like?
Well, I didn't know any different, I think, growing up. But it was good to see that, my parents took and acted the same way. Now, not to say there wasn't a little stress at times getting ready for church on Sunday mornings like everybody has, but grew up with a very consistent role model with my parents, and that was very beneficial. Yeah. We actually took, and maybe you need to get Dad on and interview him, but when Life Action first came to Fernonia Hill, it really just changed a lot of things in my dad's heart and life, and not that he wasn't faithful in everything before, but it really took and had a major impact on us as a family.
Is that something that you realized was happening at the time, or is that something looking back you can see where it was a big difference maker?
It made a difference with me. I didn't notice that with my parents so much until later on to see some of the impact of that. But
Okay, so you have an interesting story as it pertains to relationships. You have one of these classic, I think I'm going to say this right, high school sweetheart. Moments, right? Okay. So you meet Amy.
Yeah, we were 14.
Yeah. Okay. And, so how do you guys meet? What bring us along in that story?
I think we had a class together. I don't remember which one it was. We had a class or two together, and a friend of mine's, best man at our wedding, his little sister was my age, and so she was like, "Hey, you ought to ask Amy to homecoming." So we went out and fell in love, and
all at homecoming.
Well, we went and we talked a lot.
You just said it that way. I thought, okay, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. One date's all it takes. That's pretty great.
We had a date or two before homecoming just to make sure, but and we actually had to pick up the phone and dial it out. And of course, you couldn't talk after. There was no texting, obviously, but we had a rule you couldn't talk on the phone after 9 at the house, and so we had a phone we had to share with everybody. So,
and that's tricky to.
Yeah, it was 10 minutes at a time. You couldn't stay on more than 10 minutes, but we might have stretched that a few times, but so. But we took and dated, and for I don't remember how many months there, and. I got scared and stupid and broke up with her, and we'd got back from a hunting trip, and, I'm clueless 14, 15-year-old kid and didn't realize it was New Year's Eve when I broke up with her.
Oh, man.
Kind of felt bad about that.
Yeah, you should, you should. Okay.
Yeah. And so we were broken up for a while, and then, of course, we both dated other people for a little bit, but...
Okay, so you just longer stretch then.
We were, I don't remember, we were 16, 17 when we got back together. Of course, she always told the story that she had planned out exactly what it was she was going to say if I ever asked her out again. And
that New Year's thing.
That doesn't surprise me a bit.
No, it was. And so we were in, I don't remember if it was algebra or geometry, one of the, algebra 2 maybe. No, I think it was pre-cal we were in there together. And
It really matters.
it matters. It's important. Got to get the details.
Please get
you're
this
just
right.
dropping all this knowledge on.
Yeah. So, but anyway, we took and had a class together and kind of talked a bit more. Anyway, I'd still been in love with her the whole time, and anyway, asked her out again.
And what did she say? What was the thing that she was going to say to you?
Well, I didn't know what she was going to say to me until later on, but it was, sure, I'd love to.
Oh, come on.
I know.
So she let you off the hook real easy.
She let me off
But
the
it
hook
took a
easy.
class, so you needed a class to kind of work up to. It wasn't just in a moment you came and said,
No,
all right,
we
it's
worked
time
on
again.
it a little bit, and kind of we're talking in class a bit and all. So
You had to ease into the
had to
moment.
soften her back up a little. So
Yeah. Okay, so that's 17.
Yeah.
Y'all are 17?
16, 17. I think I was actually still 16 because it was in September, and I turned 17 in October. But yeah.
And then things are pretty serious.
Yeah, things were
At that
serious.
point.
We, of course, hit it right back off, and people used to always ask. We got married at 19. I was.
Did you hear that? Did you hear
Yeah.
how old? That's
Yeah.
right.
My birthday's in October, hers is in January, and so we got married in March after we turned 19.
So 14,
Yep.
go on your first date. 17, you're figuring out pre-cal or algebra or geometry or something, and you work back into her good graces at 17, and by 19, you're married.
Yeah, we were married. I have a lot of people ask, well, why'd you get married so young? I said, well, I don't know why I waited so long. So,
Yeah, that's right. That's so good.
Yeah.
Okay, now at what point? So I think you have to make sure I'm right on the details. But at one point, I'm pretty sure the story is that Amy told you you need to go away from me. You need to be done with this relationship. Walk away. You don't want to marry me. You don't want to be with me long term. Is that?
yeah, so.
What's that?
Yeah, so we were 17. She'd been sick a bit on and off, and anyway, we were 17 when she got diagnosed with cystic fibrosis, which is at the time. I think the average survival was like 26, and so she. I think just because she loved me, didn't want me to take and have to go through and suffer with that with her. She said, "Hey, you need to break up with me." Of course, I didn't
This is
listen.
at 17.
17, man.
But if George is anything, he's stubborn.
I'm stubborn.
That seems to be the thing that's common about the both of you, was some stubbornness.
A little stubbornness.
Yeah.
I don't know why I attract stubborn women, but apparently, guess y'all get to find out about that later
shots
in the week. But
fired. Okay, so I mean, man, that's a big moment in the life of a 17-year-old that is processing. Okay, here's the person that I know I'm young, but this is the person that I want to spend the rest of my life with, and now she's telling me this is what she's got to deal with for the rest of her life, and doesn't know how long it means that she's going to live, and is asking me to walk away. Man, what is going on in your mind in those days following that conversation?
honestly, there was never any question in my mind. We just figured we'd get it and work through it and do what we can. And it is a little bit funny. I took and never thought about it till later, but when we first started dating, I played guitar a little bit. And, The Dance by Garth Brooks came out a few months before we started dating.
Yeah.
And that was, I think, the first song I played for her. Maybe that, or it could have been Alan Jackson's Wanted, but one of those two. And but never really thought about that, how you see that in there.
Yeah.
But, there's a line in there, and Blake can probably take and say it better than me. But, Quint told me I'd cry up here.
Well, you were right. He is.
Yeah, so
It's okay.
but yeah, it said, I could have missed the pain, but I didn't want to miss the dance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Man, and it sounds like there was never a doubt in your mind. I mean, it sounds like from that moment where she
yeah.
where she
No,
said
we're-
it was like, no, we're gonna figure this out.
Get it figured out and work through it. And, so
How long did it take for her to, I don't know if this is the right word, but how long did it take for her to allow you to do that? Like to accept your determination? Was that a hard process for her, or was that relatively simple as well?
Well, sometimes how we remember time is a little different. I don't think it was that long, but it was, maybe a few weeks or a month. I don't know. Just a lot of question, are you sure type deal. But anyway, no, it wasn't a long time.
Yeah. Yeah.
It could have been 2 days. I don't know. That was a few years ago.
Yeah.
I have bumped my head a time or two since then.
We're going to talk about that. Yeah, we'll get to that in a minute.
Yeah, that's coming. Don't let me miss that. So I guess then at some point, very early after she says, "Okay, this is where I'm at," and you say, "No, we're gonna push forward." You guys kind of go, "Okay, we're gonna do this together," and that begins that story that then leads to you getting married and. Right?
Yeah. It was, I don't know if I doubt we'd talked about it yet, but it was kind of a foregone conclusion that, we both knew. And I guess we were 18 when I actually asked her, but we didn't actually out in the open talk about it before then, but, we had talked about it and knew but yeah, so.
At this point, so you're 17, and look, and we've talked about this a bunch on this podcast about the evolution of our faith and the maturing process and these and moments that happen in our, particularly sometimes in our teenage years, that really challenge the depth of our faith and challenge us to make it our own. I imagine that for you, this is one of those moments where your relationship with the Lord has a huge bearing on your perspective on the future. And how were you aware of that? Were you aware of the way that your faith was interacting with the way that you saw things at that moment, or was that something that had to be wrestled through? How was that?
I don't know that I was really aware of it, other than just trusting God and that He had his plans. He said, "I know the plans I have for you," and just believing. I didn't know what the words about God's sovereignty and some of those things. I don't know that I'd heard that terminology, but just even then, trusting in God's sovereignty, that He was there. One of the books I really enjoyed reading growing up was Robinson Crusoe, and you take and have him trapped on that island there, and had ran from God in so many ways, and he takes, and the only book he has is the Bible, and so he goes through reading through there, and there's a lot of talk in there about God's, about calling God, providence, and something we don't talk about a whole lot there, but God's providence, but how He guides our steps and does all those things, and I may be a little bit like Him in that I got to take and do something dumb and fall and hit the rock bottom before He pulls me back in. But anyway,
yeah.
So
yeah, that's remarkable that there is even if it's not something that you're able to in the moment really verbalize, but there is the acknowledgement of the reality of the brevity of life that's staring both of you in the face, and yet in the face of that, there's also hope. There's also a commitment to one another, and a sense of death is not the last word, and all of those things come from Scripture, come from the promises that we have. So there's some of that is there, and it's just interesting to think about how aware you were of those things.
One of my favorite books in the Bible still, but especially at that time that I read a lot, was James, and he talks about how life is but a vapor, just a mist that's there and gone, that we're like the flower of the field that grows and withers and fades away. And so I think that I don't think it's accident that I gravitated towards that book and toward other things there. I think in a lot of ways it was the Holy Spirit preparing us and planting those seeds in there that I wasn't aware of at the time.
Wow. So you guys get married at 19.
19.
And how did your family, just super quick, how did your families feel about that?
Oh, I think they loved her. In fact, Dad, when I broke up with her when we were 14, I don't think he said about 3 words to me for at least 2 months.
Oh, he was mad. He was mad.
And it was just, why did you break up? Anyway. So,
that's awesome.
Yeah. So, no, they were they were glad. I think if we'd have gotten a divorce, that they probably would have kept her and got rid of me.
Yeah, that's right. She was a favorite. That's funny. Okay, so you guys, now there's an incredible moment, a incredible survival moment coming up here. And so you're one of the only people that I've ever talked to, well, you're the only person that I've ever talked to that has survived a plane crash.
Yeah.
And so you guys have quite the adventure together. I'm sure that the folks here would love to hear how in the world that goes down.
Yes.
It's quite a remarkable story.
Yeah, it was interesting for sure. So
Yeah, that's a way to describe it.
yeah. So yeah, I was actually taking lessons. My grandfather was a pilot. My parents both actually got their pilot's license, and we flew a lot when I was younger. But then, as we got a little bit older, they didn't fly so much. But we took, and I was very interested in it, and so we got one of my grandfather's planes he still had and fixed it up and did everything to it, get it back going, and so we were actually going through taking lessons. A good friend of mine, Clay Jones, which is the best man at my wedding. I was the best man at his, and in fact, his wife was the maid of honor at ours, and Amy was the maid of honor at theirs. We did a lot of stuff growing up, but we were doing lessons, whatever. I didn't know the day of the plane crash, though, that I was going to solo that day. And so that's the first day you're out there flying by yourself. And so we went up one time. Amy was out there. That's why she happened to be at the airport, because she wanted to be there for it. And so we happened to go out there, and Clay just wanted to go up and practice emergency procedures one more time. And so we were up there practicing emergency procedures and actually had an emergency. So he simulated.
So who's in the plane?
So me and Clay are in the plane, and Amy's in the back seat back there, a little four-place Cessna Cardinal. And so yeah, I can't repeat everything that happened, so don't let me. But we're up there, and he simulates an emergency, and so we go through the whole checklist type deals there. And he said, okay, I actually found. There was an airstrip over there. He was actually putting me in the area of a watermelon field, to kind of simulate a landing on. But so we went and shot a dead stick approach into that landing strip, and we're down there, and probably about 200 feet off the ground at the time. And he said, okay, it's good. Well, we go to put power back in. We couldn't get power back in. And so at that point, he took over, and I'm going through there's backups for everything on an airplane, and turning on the auxiliary fuel pumps and all the different things. And so I had my head down, actually, until we get in there. And like I say, I won't repeat what the last words he said before the crash were, but
Watermelon field.
Watermelon field, yeah. And so I actually looked up right before we took and went through the trees. And so, but yeah.
So this all happens. I mean, I think we imagine a plane crash. We think you've got time because you're way up in the air. This all
normally
takes
you'd
place.
have a little more time,
Yeah,
but
you're
didn't
200
have
feet off the ground.
Yeah, and going slow because we were, And so, yeah, people said, well, I bet you were scared. Well, we didn't have time to be scared. It was just trying to keep everything going and flying and trying to keep it in the air. But
so you look up, trees, which is not exciting. And
last thing I remember is the windshield breaking, and I woke up about 15 minutes later. So,
and
Yeah.
yeah, and so we're yeah. So I don't know if you had any questions.
no, I do. Keep telling the story.
Yeah.
So many questions.
So yeah, we woke up. I'll try not to get too graphic on everything, but we woke up, and of course, we'd got knocked out. We were very groggy. What happened? Of course, reaching for things, and of course, we're still sitting in the airplane. The front edge of the wing that used to be here, and the windshield was actually back here now. And the left wing, it actually was laid over the top of us, and later figured out we had about 20 gallons of avgas spilled out on us. We all ended up having some chemical burns from it. But of course, you wake up and you're trying to work the radio. Don't realize your headset's gone, the radio's dead. But it took a minute or two. We kind of realized what happened. We'd have been in a crash. And I just remember Clay was over saying, hey, you need to help me. I can't get my seatbelt off. So he hands me his knife, which he'd already cut his seatbelt. He just didn't realize it. And I look over, and his legs were no longer straight. I'll just say it that way. And he broke both his femurs in there. And so we look up, and there's, nothing. I mean, it's all canopy. And so trying to figure out what we're going to do, how we're going to get out there. Of course, talking to Amy. She was in the back seat and could talk to us, but interestingly, she doesn't remember anything visually from the time the accident happened on.
Wow.
But remembers hearing and talking to us, but has no visual record until I got in the hospital. But anyway, but she's back there. I know things aren't good, and so trying to figure out how we're going to get out of there. What are we going to do? And and so trying to figure out if I can walk downstream. We were out in the middle of nowhere, south end of the county, and about that time heard an airplane flying overhead, and so we were at the end of that landing strip. There was a little bit of woods. There was a little field that went perpendicular to us, and then there was a creek. Well, we were on the other side of that creek, so I heard them taking and flying over, and so I get out and work my way around there and get out across the creek into that field there, and there was a piece of the plane, of course, laying there, so kind of held it up there, and they saw us, landed on the field, came running over there, and that's how we got found. A friend of ours knew where we were, and somebody down there local called in, hey, I think a plane went down, and so they hopped in there, and Ashley Hill and Colonel Bob Dunn was out there at the airport, so he hopped in there with him, and came out there, and of course Ashley made it to us a lot sooner. I don't know how old Bob was at the time, but probably in his 70s, and came through the woods there and helped us out. So,
wow. Okay, so how long had you guys been married at the time?
That was 2000, June 8th of 2000. So we'd have been married a little over 5 years.
Okay, so that's quite the experience for the newlyweds.
Yeah. I've often told people, the best thing you can do for a marriage is to have a near-death experience. It's got to be near death,
Right on
You got pretty close.
Yeah.
Wow,
we got
that's
pretty
incredible.
close.
That's incredible.
It changes your perspective on things.
Oh, I
All
imagine.
the little things we used to fight about, you just realize they don't matter anymore.
Yeah,
So.
yeah. Which is such it's an interesting theme, part of y'all's story. Even thinking about where it began at 17 and talking about future, and you guys had moment after moment after moment of the experience of God's grace. Well, we all do. It's a matter of looking forward, acknowledging it, but
Some of us are more hard-headed, so it takes bigger expressions.
I mean, you said that. I didn't say that. You said that.
I'll admit it.
But one of the things that I believe I understood is that because of the cystic fibrosis, there was Amy was told that you guys would never be able to have children, right?
Yeah, it was very, very rare for women to have. Well, men almost non-existent, but very rare for women to take and be able to have kids. And
So-
we knew that. We knew there was a chance, but we.
Yeah. So talking about these moments of God's providence and God's grace. Quint's sitting in the room, so some odds are overcome here. Talk a little bit about that process, and as you guys are obviously processing what's going on with her, and I'm sure I don't know. Did you think that's never going to be something that is part of our life or not, or was that something? What was that like, and then what was it like to find out? Oh my goodness, we're going to have a baby.
Yeah, so we did want to, and we actually, with her health and work and everything else we took, and a lot of times just, kind of said, well, next year we'll try. Well, we eventually got and said, hey, we want to get off all birth control and see what God will happen. We don't know what will happen, but we're praying for it. And we... Not too many people know this, but sorry. Quint wasn't our first pregnancy. Mm-hmm. We were excited, but we weren't very far along. We had a miscarriage, and that was one of those low spots in our marriage.
Yeah.
It's. Anybody who's been through that knows that it's it can be difficult. And, the reason I bring it up there is just to encourage people that there's a way through, and men and women often grieve differently, and that was a bit of a challenge to take and work through some of that, and of course, I tended to be, other than, of course, I'm crying like a baby up here, but I tend to be more stoic most of the time, and so it was a bit of a challenge there. But yeah, later on we took, and it was probably, I don't know, at least a year later, maybe closer to 2, we found out about Quint. Of course, we were concerned about, she was a labor and delivery nurse, so she knew risk and things there, and so we actually didn't tell anybody till we were pretty far along, and but no, it was a joy to find out that she was going to be able to have him. But along about the time that we were pregnant, they had found out that a few bugs that she had in there, and of course you're very limited on what antibiotics you can take and have when you're pregnant, and so she had several rounds where it was pretty tough. Got in the hospital, spent a pretty bit of time. In fact, they even took and thought that Quint was going to have to come pretty early at one point because she was sick, and they were giving us some medication that actually ended up causing some swelling. But she gained like 40 pounds of water in a week, And so they took and had already given the first shot of the steroids to kind of help trigger his lungs to develop. The Lord delivered us through that. She was actually able to carry him to. He was full term, but just barely, So, but again, kind of got sick again. But she was actually able to deliver here in Nacogdoches, where she wanted to, not in Houston, and spend a little time in the hospital afterwards. But
wow, that's an incredible redemption in a lot of ways, and I'm sure that is you're balancing in those moments leading up to Quint's birth. You're balancing the past and also hope for the future. What's that like, living in the tension of those two things?
Yeah, and probably not as much the past as just the concern about her and her health.
Yeah.
And after Quint was born, Amy actually got real sick, and just I think the stress of that. There was some of the things that needed to be treated in her, that bugs that were growing there that they weren't able to treat, and she actually got real sick, and had a lot of other complications through the medication, some neuropathy and hearing loss that she dealt with the rest of her life. But I just remember the hardest I ever prayed was that, and it's one of those deals where you kind of wonder, well, why can't I pray that hard when things are better? But the hardest I ever prayed was just that she would live to see his first birthday. And she made it 10 more years than that.
Wow. What an extraordinary gift. That's amazing. I want to spend time just for a quick second talking about Amy. I didn't get to, obviously I met her when we came, and she's hosting that group, yeah. and that was the first time I got to meet her. But you mentioned earlier that you played the guitar when you were a kid, but music was a big part of y'all's world, of her world. I don't know quite how that got there, but here's what I when you met Amy, music is actually a really good analogy for who she. I don't know if analogy is the right word here, but for who she is. Yeah. She has had a glow of just delight and satisfaction, and was always present in the moment. Was so attentive to whoever was there. That was, being in her home. That was something that we just were immediately blessed by. Was just her care. But that relationship that you guys had with music, and the way that I just feel like that really personifies who she was. Talk a little bit about her. Talk a little bit. That's a giant task and a giant question, but talk a little bit about her glow with so much that she was facing. Man, everybody else always felt like they were the most important person in the room, regardless of how she felt on a given day. You were always the most important, and just an extraordinary person. Just, I don't know, give us a little window into her heart and who she was.
Well, she never wanted to be about her. In fact, she didn't even talk about her illness around anybody else for a long time because she didn't want to focus on her.
Yeah.
But she had the smile that was just, a very genuine smile with her whole face, eyes and everything.
Yeah.
And, but music was a big part of us getting together. She was a pianist, and then, later learned how to play the guitar after we got married. She was interested in it. And of course, picked up the mandolin and played on stage and all those things.
Yeah.
But in fact, that's how we got to know Blake, was because he was interim there. So
Yeah, I was just thinking, she, when I first came here, I was, I don't know how old I was, early mid-20s, pretty young guy, and just taking on this responsibility of pastoring this church through the worship ministry, and there were plenty of chances for me to fail and to do things incorrectly, and she was one of the ones that just was a nonstop encouragement to me over and over again. And I don't think that I would have been as successful in the ministry at this church in the first couple of years if it weren't for Amy. And one of the coolest things is that in her spot over on the stage, which is, if you're looking at the stage, it's the left-hand side of the stage. That's where she was.
for you old people, the organ side.
The organ side
I'm
stage,
dating myself, so.
But that was her spot, and that's where she was every Sunday with a big, massive smile on her face and just letting loose. And it's really cool because our nephew occupies that spot now. And just to see that legacy of leading the church in worship and how that impacted not only me, but everybody that had an interaction with her.
Yeah.
Wow. I was just reflecting about her and had a couple conversations just with others that were doing the same. And actually, Ashley, Blake's wife, sent us a note just reflecting on Amy and talked about the singing in these little Bible studies and stuff that she would that she would lead, and kind of the reluctance to do that, not really want, because I think it probably had a lot to do with what you're saying. Just didn't want to be
about her, and and yeah. So I mean, and of course, towards the end there with some of the hearing loss, she was a little more concerned about some of that. But no, she really never wanted to be out front and do it. But she loved to play, and so yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. Thank you. I know that is so hard to do. Just a quick window into who she was. But okay, so you guys, you said, so Quint is born, and I'm sure that first birthday that's a big deal. Yeah, I'm sure in the back of your mind you're going, this is what I prayed for. This is what we asked the Lord for. What's that like? What was that 1 year celebration like?
Oh, it was. I mean, it was one of those deals where you just see how, and throughout my life, I've seen where God has answered prayers over and above what we pray for. And again, it's a little convicting sometimes looking back and saying, well, why don't I pray like that all the time? But no, it was a very joyous thing there. And then after that, she was actually steadily improving. And so when Quint was young, other than occasional, need to go in the hospital. Of course, her being a nurse and us being able to take care of things, we were able to do a lot at home that we didn't have to go to the hospital for. When we remodeled the house, Quint was a little over a year old, we actually had our laundry room. Most of our laundry room was actually basically a pharmacy, and had all the different medical equipment. And, if anybody stopped in there, they thought we were a drug addict, all the needles and things. But yeah, so she actually continued to improve through there and was able to do a lot of stuff with Clint, just normal. He didn't probably realize that she was sick for a long time.
Yeah.
He'd sit up there in the chair with her while she was doing her breathing treatments or taking IVs. And so anyway, but she loved taking him to the little gardens at SFA, riding the bike around and all those kind of things.
Yeah. Yeah. Talk a little bit, George, about how, if you're in those early years of marriage, Quint's born, celebrate a year, and as you kind of continue to move through the days and weeks and months and years, obviously she continues to get treatment. I'm sure there's moments where there's a continued prognosis, and that this could be coming. I'm sure that's something that is at least somewhat frequently kind of put in front of you guys. Talk about how did you manage that perspective in the day in and the day out? How did the as time moved on, how did your faith interact with kind of that day-to-day interaction with the reality of what you guys were facing?
Well, I don't want to give the impression that we did everything perfect or anything. There was a lot of times where, it was a roller coaster that, that we would fall away and whether we, had problems or whatever and then, come back. And so, we do see that God's faithful to us, and I appreciate that, But, there were times where we thought, hey, she may be able to see him grow to be, into adulthood, and then, but towards the end there, things started getting progressively a little worse, and like I said, I don't know how many Clint may know, probably till he was 5 or 6, when she 6 or 7 maybe, when she started kind of going downhill a little bit, but he was 11 when she died, and we knew for the last a year, 18 months, that it was coming. A few times we thought it was coming sooner. And I would say she died April 11th, which was 22 years and a month after we were married. Around about December, January before that, doctor said, hey, you need to, and maybe even a little before that, we'd started getting other things in order, wills and, thinking about funeral arrangements. But around that time, the doctor said, hey, it's coming soon, which we went through the whole, do we do a lung transplant? Can we do a lung transplant? Do we qualify? Don't qualify? All those roller coaster deals. And with the bugs that she had in her lungs, they didn't have good outcomes. And so it was actually a little bit of a relief that for both of us to not have to go through all of that. I mean, it was that process for somebody with CF can be pretty painful.
Yeah.
It can be very successful in some cases, but with some of what she had, wouldn't be. But doctor said, hey, you need to start, anybody you want to see, and kind of get all that taken care of, because you're going to progressively feel worse and worse, and kind of gave us some estimated time frame of what that would be. And she kept getting worse, and she would have a lot of bleeding, coughing up blood in her lungs, and it was kind of one of those deals. Just, you were talking earlier about the grace that he gave us, and just we took, and spring break came around, and my sister and sister-in-law took the kids down to Orange Beach, and Quint went with them. And she just right before that she'd been having steadily coughing up blood episodes there, multiple times a week. It quit. Nothing the doctors did. It just quit. And she actually started feeling better. And so we go, well, why don't we go down there and surprise them? And so we actually went down there. They were out doing a photo shoot and didn't know it. Mom and Dad, of course, were in on it. We had to turn the cameras on in there so they could watch. But so we actually went in there and were sitting there on the couch in the condo when they took and walked in from that. Of course, it was a very joyous deal. But so we got to that. But we basically got an extra month there that we weren't expecting. We thought it was coming real soon, and but just to have everything done, prepared. She took and planned every aspect of her funeral. Mike knows all about it, down to.
I mean, it was. I have a handwritten outline. Every song, every scripture, every detail was pre-planned.
Yeah,
it was perfect. I love that. It was so cool to have that.
But yeah, no, it was good to have that time where we weren't stressing about anything.
Yeah,
weren't worried about what was there, what was coming up, and
George, I think one of the things that, obviously you're living it, and and that experience is extraordinary. For those of us that were alongside you, were I would say watching it, we use the word peace all the time in church. It's a word we throw around a lot.
Yeah.
It's a powerful word. It's a significant word in Scripture. But when you actually see peace personified in action, when you actually see somebody whose countenance is peaceful, especially against the backdrop of what is such a difficult situation, it is striking. It is obvious because it is so abnormal. And I think just for me, and I've heard others talk about this as well, but one of the things that stood out so distinctly about those last 6 months was the peace that you both walked in, but particularly for her. As her health declined, it was almost like as her health declined, her peace increased. Yeah. Take us into that. Obviously, you saw it close up and experienced that. What's that like to experience God's peace, and at the same time, it doesn't mean that things aren't hard, and you're going through some of the greatest turmoil of your life. What's that like?
Well, it's one of those things people maybe ask how you do it, whatever. It wasn't us.
Yeah.
It was God pouring out His mercy and grace on us.
Yeah.
I think He gives us the amount of faith we need. A verse I stumbled on when I was probably Quint's age was, and it's been just kind of a life verse for us, but it's Isaiah 26:3, where it says, "You keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on you because he trusts in you."
Yeah.
And we just always try to come back to that. Now, do we always take and trouble have our minds focused on Him? No, but we know that God is in control, that He takes and turns the hearts of kings, that it's like water in His hand, and that He cares for us more than the sparrow. And so it's one of those things that we can just rest in that. And just being able to trust that He has our best will, our good at His heart. And even though it may not be something here, but Paul said, and this was something that really was, I think, part of how Amy, especially in those last months, really felt. But he said, "For me to live is Christ, and to die is gain." Mm-hmm. And she was ready to go home. I mean, we'd talked about it, and she was tired of the struggle. And I think if it hadn't been for Quint being there and wanting to see him grow up, I think it probably would have been a couple years earlier. But she worked and toiled and all that to take and try to keep and see him and get him grown and matured. And
Wow.
I mean, that was her only concern.
Yeah. So
I mean,
peace
for me too, but that was her main concern.
You too. So you're describing peace, because I think when we talk about it as if peace is something that we do. Peace is something that we go get. And you're not talking. That's not what you're saying at all.
No,
you're talking about something that is given to you.
It's given to you.
Yeah.
And it's just something where you got to rest in that and trust that.
Wow.
And it wasn't like we came along and all of a sudden hit this deal knew how to handle it. But we had seen God be faithful time and time and time again throughout our lives. And so not only do we know what the Scripture said, but we'd seen evidence of him being faithful to us.
Wow. Man, that's incredible. What a powerful story. I think this is for sure one of those with part 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Yeah, because there is more to the story, but
there is more to the story, and we need to tell it. We'll tell it. We'll tell it.
Yeah.
But this is a spot to land the plane.
We're gonna land it this time.
And I want to land it. I want to land it there, man. That peace isn't something that you do. It's something that God gives. It's something that is His, and that He generously gives. And our job is to receive it. Our job is to allow Him to give it, to stay near to Him, to keep our mind stayed on Him, and to receive that good gift. George, man, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Sharing with all of us the deep experiences of your life and the profound ways that the Lord has taken care of you and walked you through. Quint, man, thanks for being here with us and sharing this time. We're going to shut it down right there. This has been episode 1 of the new season. I don't know what it's episode 51.
51,
I guess.
And
there's more to come. And should we tease like maybe part 2 of this is coming?
Yeah, the next episode will be very closely related to this episode.
Maybe actually related.
Yes. ...
Yeah. Okay. Hey, friends, thanks for being with us. Listen, if you've got anybody that you want to recommend for us to interview, or any feedback or comments, we would love to hear it. George would love to hear how just this story has impacted you. We would love to hear testimony of that. And you know where to find us.
That's right.
We're rusty.
I just want to leave you hanging.
I don't know.
I just want to leave you hanging.
Where should they find us, Blake?
You can email us at stc@fredoniahill.org.
Thanks so much. Adios. Hey, thank you.